Good morning, or good afternoon, or good evening, depending on where you are in the world. Welcome to Cichlids and Coffee. I hope you're drinking out of one of these. A shameless plug. So how are you all doing this morning? I hope you're doing great. And I'm doing pretty good. And a lot of good stuff happening. And looks like the world is going to start reopening as I predicted it would after the election. And so it looks like schools and restaurants and anyway, here's hoping we get back to a semblance of normal very quickly and of course very safely. So let's see here. We have a lot of good people on already. And for those of you that arrived early, thank you so much for being an early bird. And let me check here on, let's see, who was here first? Ed Tomaszewski. Ed Tomaszewski. I hope I didn't butcher that too much. If you send me your mailing address and I locate my stickers, I'm probably going to have some new stickers done up. But if I locate them, I'll go ahead and mail you some stickers. Send me your mailing address to ben.o.cichlid@gmail.com. And that's just my way of saying thank you for being first on the chat. I noticed Doug got in there early. Hey, Cat Sailor and Doug M. Hey, R. Baglio. Hello, my friend. Good to see you here. And let's see, Joyce Brown. Good morning to you, Joyce. And hello, Tony. Glad to see you here, Tony. Leo, T-Bone, Amy 5 Aquatics. Good morning, Amy. Glad you're here. Hey, Denny. I want a big shout out to my moderators, Denny and Kevin, and of course the amazing Candi and GP Gurvinder. Thank you so much for everything you do, and as moderators, it is sort of a thankless job, and they do it on a volunteer basis, love of the hobby, and I thank them very much. And what their job is, what a moderator does, just make sure that the chats are keeping it decent, and people are behaving and answering questions, posting links. Like if I mention a video I did in the past, they'll throw a link up, or if I mention a particular vendor, they might put a link up. So they're there to help facilitate and help everybody on the stream, and they are very, very appreciated. If you're, let's go ahead and do the official start, which comes, of course, with this. It lets me sneak in a sip of coffee. So the real reason I do it. Hey, if you're new to the channel, be sure to hit that bell and hit that sub and all that good stuff. And it really helps. It tells YouTube that you're liking the content, getting something out of it, and it encourages YouTube to put the channel in front of other fish keepers. And that's very, very appreciated. And for those of you who are looking for ways to support the channel beyond that, you can use my Amazon link to get to Amazon. You can see the handsome model that I'm using there this morning, and that is my oldest son wearing a channel sweatshirt and drinking out of a channel mug. So all that kind of stuff is available at Teespring, and use live stream to get 10% at checkout if you get anything there. I have a couple announcements, and one of them is that I am getting into an arrangement with James at the Cichlid Shack. He's going to be helping out in some ways, and I'm very grateful to him for reaching out to me and offering his help. If you don't know about the Shack, check them out, cichlidshack.com, and they're over in Tempe, Arizona, right next to Phoenix. And I visited his shop. I did a video in my route from Los Angeles to Nashville. My youngest daughter and I stopped at the Shack along with our 2 beagles, and we went in there, and James was kind enough to come in on a Sunday and give us a tour of the place. Quite a facility, and he's expanding it further. He's created a new link for those of you looking at getting some fish or supplies. Use this link, Shack Attack 10. Shack Attack 10. And that will get you 10%, and it will be sure it's all lowercase, Shack Attack 10. And so thank you very much, James. I know he listens to these live streams, and he is very appreciated. Also, a shout out to Elite Cichlids for helping with the providing of some of the plants. And if you do get anything from Elite Cichlids, be sure you ask for the Ben O discount. And also, there's a company called Underwater Galleries. They make these caves, which I think are very cool. They're a ceramic cave that you can stack. For those of you out there who have fish who like hiding places, who need caves to breed in, and you don't want to use the clay pot, these are very, very nice, and they're stackable, so you can create a Mabuna condominium if you want, and they are available from Underwater Galleries. Now, Underwater Galleries contacted me and said that they are in the middle of doing a big contest where they're going to be giving away stuff. If you go over to the Facebook page, the Ben O Cichlid, Ben O apostrophe Cichlid Facebook page, there's some details on it there. They're going to extend some special discounts and things to members of the Ben O Cichlid Facebook group. So a shout out to Underwater Galleries. And I think they're going to send me some more stuff. And you know me, I'll probably end up using some of it, but I'll give some of it away to you as well, just like I've done in the past with the plants from Elite Cichlids. So another announcement, the channel surpassed 6 million views, and that's a bit of a milestone. I was informed by YouTube, congratulations, blah, 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 6 million views. And I think we just went over 33,000 subscribers. Let me double check. And yeah, 33,053. So we just surpassed 33,000 subscribers. And I'm telling you, years ago when I threw up a video of a 29-gallon aquarium, I had no idea where this was going. And I'm so happy that it's gone the way it's gone because of the value that I hold for this, this interaction relationship that we have, but also the in light of the turn that the world took with regards to COVID and working from home and everything else. This has really turned out to be something that has really helped me get through this period. So it's been very, very good. So I thank all of you that supported the channel and helped me get up over 33,000 and over 6 million views. A big shout out to all of you. So let's take a look here at today's topic, and we're going to talk about filtration. And the topic was planted as a seed by somebody, I think it was last week, who made a comment. Don't forget about filtration. And I started thinking about it, and I said, that really is my roots. Is wanting to help people in the care of fish, whether it's the cycling of a new tank, the filtering, substrate, fish selection. It really is. The whole purpose of the channel is to help in any ways that I can, and reviewing products. I have a whole playlist on product reviews, and so it kind of triggered something in me. I said, yeah, you know what? I think I do want to talk a little bit about filtration. And the topic that popped into my head was ways that we mess up our filtration. Common mistakes that are made in filtering our tanks that really can be avoided. And I put together just a short little list of things. If you know me, you know that I like lists, and I'll go ahead and go over some of those with you. And let me look real quick here on the chat, make sure I didn't miss. miss a super chat. Some of you like to support the channel with super chats. I really appreciate that. Super chat is where you throw money at the channel. I used to refer to it as a pole dancer kind of, but that was a horrible image. So it's just a way of saying, hey, I like what you're doing. Here's a couple bucks. And you throw a couple dollars at the channel. And it looks like Brock came in with a coffee cup meme. Thank you, Brock. Much appreciated, my friend. And Jordan LaBelle. Thank you, Jordan, for 10 bucks there. Really appreciated. A toast to the two of you. Erna from Belgium. Hi, Erna. I'd love to go to Belgium someday. I really would. Hey, John Cox. I'll get back to some of your comments and questions when we get to the Q&A section of the live stream. Hi, Candy. Glad you're here, Candy. And looks like Denny is here. Is GP here? I know it's a little early for Kevin Green out on the West Coast, but he did make it to that special that impromptu Wednesday night stream that I did. We did get Kevin there. It was, I think it started at about 4 o'clock his time, 4 p.m. So he had woken up by then and was able to participate. Hey, Mick David Bautista, love back to you, my friend. And in the Philippines. My God, thank you so much for sitting in. And so let's go. Let's take a look at today's topic and some of the ways that I think that we mess up our filters. And I'll tell you one way that I've been guilty of, and maybe you've done this too, is go before you know. And in other words, and maybe you've done this with other stuff. Maybe you've tried to assemble something from IKEA, or tried to do some plumbing in your house, or you just go, I'm smart enough, I'm familiar enough with what's going on, I can figure stuff out. And then you jump in. And after you jump in, you realize that you did something wrong and you messed something up. And so my first point on the list is going before you know. I'll give you an example. These are hoses. These are hoses from an FX canister filter. And the natural inclination one would have when they get this big hose, it's all one big hose when you get it. The normal inclination would be to take that hose, kind of figure out where the 50% mark is, and cut it. And then you set up your canister and you realize that the only place that big can is going to fit is on the far right, which means that the hose that goes to, let's say, the input can be pretty short on that side of the tank, but the one that goes to the return is going to have to be really long. So now what you have is you have a 30-70. Now, maybe in an ideal world, I'm not sure it's that important in a vacuum of a canister filter. Maybe you should have 50-50 for optimum. I don't know if that's the case because you're operating in a vacuum. So it doesn't really matter. It's all sort of a sealed system. But you now need 30% length and 70%, but you cut the hoses 50-50 because it kind of made sense. If I remember correctly, I think that happened to John once over at KG Tropicals. I think he cut his hoses and then realized they had to be placed differently or had to reorder a hose or something. But it's one of those things where when it happens, you go, "Oh, are you kidding me? What the?" And then now you've got to wait while you call up Fluval, and I'll tell you something, Fluval parts are not cheap. They are not cheap. And so all of a sudden you have yourself or you work around it, you put the canister up on a box or. So Before you install that filter, watch a few videos, 2 or 3, because you might get different information from different videos. There's no one person out there that is the fish god. And I look back on some of my videos and I go, well, I could have done that a little bit differently, maybe. And I've had people point something out in the comments that say, well, instead of that, why don't you try this? And I said, well, that actually makes sense. So if there's a series of videos, like let's say in my sump videos, watch the later videos, the more recent videos. In my canister playlist, watch the most recent videos about the canister you're interested in, because by then you know that there's been some learning and there's been some tweaking. You look at some of my early canister filters, you go, wow, why is he using blue balls, those floating blue balls in that 704? That was the only media I had. So if you go forward a little bit, you'll see that I was able to get rid of my blue balls, which Kevin Green was very happy about. So at any rate, watch some videos, read what comes with the canister. And I know that sometimes these filters are made in China, or if you get a Sun and maybe the instructions are not the easiest to decipher, but still, watch a few videos, and before you do anything unreversible, be sure that you understand and know before you go. Okay, that's point number 1. Point number 2 is trying to do too much. Trying to do too much with the filter, and by that what I mean is you're stuffing. Well, I want to have thick sponges, and I want to have 2 kilos of biohome, and I want to have a kilo of matrix, and I want to have, so the person somehow taps down that filter and gets all that stuff stuffed in there, and what they end up doing is they end up clogging. They clog the filter. They put too much, and their water, their gallons per hour, and their total tank volume turnover goes down to about a third of what maybe 50% to a third of what the manufacturer is saying you should get with that filter. Now, there's only one filter, I think, that tests and gives you gallons per hour with media. I think that's Fluval. I might be wrong. If you know of other filters, let me know. But I think Fluval, what it promotes is with media. The other filters out there, I think, are just saying empty. This is what the pump is designed to do. So, as a sort of corollary or an addition to point number 2, is assuming that your filters are going to be producing or turning over with the same gallons per hour that are on the box. They're not. They're once you stuff them with media, that gallon per hour is going to go way down. And if you overstuff it, you're going to get a few issues. One of the issues I talked about in a video on noisy canisters. I think the thumbnail on that video said it's too loud or it's too noisy or something. And it talked about why canister filters can become noisy, why they can rattle and things like that. And one of the reasons was that the baskets were not seated correctly because the person was stuffing so much media that the lid of the basket couldn't actually snap down into place. And so you had this loose lid and this media pushing the lid up. And when you'd fire up the canister, you'd get this rattle. And the they're tightening the hoses and they're checking their O-ring and they're making sure the canister is flat. They're putting a pad under the canister and then they fire it up again. Too much media. Trying to do too much. That media will clog up real quick and you'll have other issues. So that's point number 2. Point number 3 is one that I've talked about in videos before, and it has to do with just messing too much with our filters. And look, your tank is running great. You've got great test results, right? You've got 0 ammonia, 0 nitrites. Your nitrates are around 10 or 15, or but you heard about this brand new media, and it sounds great, and so you rush out, you pay a bunch of money, you buy the media, you get it in, and you pull out. You pull out the scrubbies that you had in there, right? The $1 pot scrubbers that you had in there, and you throw in, a bunch of expensive biomedia. 2 things happen. One, you can have you can shock your system, and get an ammonia spike, which is very, very hard on your fish. And number 2 is every time you mess with your filters, you create, of course, stress with your fish just by the fact of you messing with things. And number 2 is you put additional wear and tear on the things that hold that filter together. Again, in the case of canisters, the clamps are getting wear and tear. The O-rings are getting wear and tear every time you mess. So by messing too much, I would suggest instead, if things are testing out fine, your fish look healthy, they're colorful, they're active, they're eating, leave things alone. Don't mess. And one of the advantages, I'll tell you that I'll show you something here. One of the advantages of the filters in the tank behind me, I have two filters back there. One of them is from my friends over at Expertmatic, the bottom one here, Expertmatic, and the top one is a Marineland. Those filters will tell you when you should mess with them. And I even have videos on both of those subjects. In the case of the Expertmatic, those bubbles will start to diminish, and you'll notice the amount of distance that they travel out, and ultimately it'll stop making bubbles. And that tells you that your sponges are now clogged, and you have to pull them out and give them some, squeeze them out in some tank water and put it back together. The nice thing about that Expertmatic is you can actually disengage the bottom from the top and just quickly pull it out and let the top keep running. And unless you want to do a full servicing, and I'll get to that in a minute. And then the second you do that and plug it back in, you'll notice the bubble flows immediately, starts again. So it tells you when it's time to service it. In the case of canisters, as you can see here, in the case of hang-on back filters, like you see here at the top here, they have these overflow valves, the overflow valves right in the middle. And that overflow valve you'll start to see a trickle of water. And that's telling you that your media is starting to become a little bit blocked. And in an effort to get out of the hang-on back, it'll go through those channels. So most, if not all, filters these days have some hang-on back filters have something like that tells you, hey, your media's blocked. Time to do some servicing. So it's time for me to take that Marineland filter and swap out the pinky floss that I have in there, and rinse out any other media I might have in there. So they tell you now. In the case of a can, now some hang-on backs have a little pop-up, right? They have a little pop-up button that goes up and tells you. What if that pop-up button becomes jammed or corroded or whatever? It doesn't pop up. So you still have to look and see how the flow is. And with canister filters, you definitely need to watch the flow. You know, in the canister outputs, you can tell, like especially if you're using the canister output to break up the surface, you'll see a lot of waves and maybe the water coming up a little bit, right? So that tells you that okay, it's pumping strong. The second you see that rise in the water disappear and the output is slow, that tells you need to get in there and do your canister. You know, get in there and service that canister when you have a drop in pressure, a drop in flow. Again, watch them, and don't mess with them unnecessarily. By doing so, you put unnecessary wear and tear on the equipment, and you don't need to do that. Now, it looks like I had a little bit of a flicker in the lights. If we have a power outage, I will try and get the stream back on as fast as I can, just a warning. I was talking to somebody the other day about having a backup generator. If you folks know a backup generator that is affordable and reliable, go ahead and mention it in the chat. I am shopping for a backup generator because I am putting a lot of stress on the grid, especially as I add new tanks. And I'm going to have an electrician come out, work on my box, make sure I can handle the necessary amperage. But if you know of a good backup generator at a fair price, tell me in the comments. I'd appreciate it. I just noticed a flicker, and I heard one of the filters go like it was restarting a little bit. So anyway, a little bit of a scare. So now the other point, I think this is point number 4, is not doing the, adjust my chair here, not doing the extra step maintenance that filters need from time to time. And I'll tell you what I mean by that. Because folks don't feel comfortable doing it, they're afraid they're going to mess it up, they're not sure how to do it, they may avoid doing something like taking apart the impeller housing excuse me, of something like an FX6. The impeller housing needs to be disassembled at least a couple times a year and really cleaned out. The impeller in a Sun, the impeller really in any kind of a filtration system, even the impellers in your power heads, your wave makers, those need to be disassembled, pulled out, and cleaned up. The gallons per hour of your pumps, the impellers, things of this nature. And I saw this on I think it was Bulk Reef Supply, one of the saltwater channels, talked about how as soon as you start using pumps, impellers, power heads, things like this, the drop off in gallons per hour is pretty noticeable pretty rapidly. And so what that means is that they get gunked up, and the gunk inhibits the ability to spin freely for the magnet to really do what it's supposed to do. So get in there, watch some videos again, watch some videos. I have a whole FX6 playlist, a whole canister playlist that talks about how to take apart the impellers and what you have to watch for, like really making sure you get the top and bottom of the stem, the middle stem really in the right place, so that when you put the top on, it snaps in place correctly and it spins right. If you don't get that in correctly, it's not going to spin right, and you're going to hear a rattle, and you're going to have what they call cavitation of bubbles. Okay, if you have a lot of bubbles coming out of your canister, you might not have that impeller seated correctly. So you're getting this cavitation. You're getting a lot of agitation. So if you don't snap the top of that impeller correctly on the motor housing of your Sun canister, you're going to get a rattle. You're going to get a hum, a buzz. It's going to drive you insane. So you got to make sure you snap that, get that impeller in there right. So doing impeller servicing, doing O-ring servicing, And what do I mean by O-ring servicing? You can, and I do this from time to time, maybe once a year. I'll pull the O-rings off of the filters that I have, and I'll put a food grade silicone lubricant on the O-ring, and that extends the life of the O-ring. I also will inspect the O-ring. You inspect it to make sure that it doesn't have any flat spots, any cracks, because if it does, that's going to lead to a leak, and things are not going to seal right. So this is that sort of extra mile maintenance that folks just forget about it. They don't do it. They just leave it alone. So, a couple times a year, maybe make a checklist that you have, like a little calendar, put it on your Google Calendar or whatever, just a reminder, check my O-rings, pull them off, lubricate them, put them back on, run a cleaner through my hoses, make sure my hoses are all cleaned out, that they're not full of gunk. The return heads, the return hosing, make sure all of that is you can run pipe cleaners down those things, and you'll be shocked at how much gunk and junk comes out of those hoses. So avoiding routine maintenance. Now the last point I'm gonna talk about on the five ways that we create filter problems. It's kind of an odd one, and I'm not sure it's really a problem. But very often what we do is we, in an effort to take care of our fish, which is a good thing, it's well-intentioned, but I think we can go way unnecessarily overboard. Now, how many of you have heard the saying, you can't over-filter? Or you can't filter too much? There's some truth in that. I mean, you probably can't turn that water, run it through, filter media too much. That probably can't happen. I don't think it would ever reach a point where it was actually harmful. So you really can't. But do you really need 7 canisters and 3 hang-on back filters on a 75-gallon aquarium? Okay, maybe you have 35 fish in there. I understand. But really, do you really need to have 10,000 gallons of turnover per hour? I mean, do you really need to do that? Or are we wasting electricity? Are we wasting energy? And is it possible that we might be creating more movement? Like there's a right amount, there's a sweet spot of water movement that I think is good. It gets the detritus to come off the bottom and go into the intakes. Maybe it gives the fish a challenge. But can we get too much movement, too much force, too much water flow going, where it actually becomes, like the fish start to feel pushed around? For example, if you have angels or discus, these big, these larger flat fish, a strong water current constantly is going to be pushing that fish around to a point where it probably needs to stay pointed in one direction, or it's going to lose its mind. So, so too much, going way overboard. And I imagine you can go the other way too. You can do not enough. The person who started, let's say you start that 75-gallon with 1 hang-on back filter and 3 fish. 5 years later, you have 22 fish in there, and you still have that 1 hang-on back filter. So you're at that point, I would say there's a very strong chance, even if you're doing twice a week, 80% water changes twice a week, you're probably still not keeping up with the amount of waste that is being produced by those fish. I'd certainly like to hear your opinion on it. Comment in the chat. I'd like to hear what you have to say about that. And those are the 5 areas where I think we can create issues or problems in filtration. There's more. I know there's more. If you can think of more, put them in the chat. Maybe we'll talk about them right now. And one that I think just popped up, and I think one that I've heard very often, is over cleaning. And when you clean, for example, when you clean your hang-on back filter, do you pull the entire unit off and clean all the inside? Or do you just pull the guts out and just do maintenance on that, but leave the rest of it alone? Because the rest of it might have good bacteria, or for whatever reason. Certainly if you're going to do, if you're going to do impeller maintenance, you're going to have to pull the unit off, right? Open it up, crack it open a couple times a year. But do you pull the guts out, or do you pull the whole unit off? When you do your canisters, I've seen people who do canister filters, they don't really do a good scrub on the inside. They say, well, I'm going to leave that alone. That mulm or whatever it is that's coating it, I think that might be a little beneficial. I'm going to leave that alone. And so different viewpoints. But the person who does a deep substrate vacuuming, pulls out the decor and washes it under hot running water, and then washes all their filter media and filter and filter compartment in tap water, is going to have a problem. That person is going to probably have a die-off, probably have a bit of a die-off in the tank, and that is one of the most common mistakes brand new fish keepers will get into. They try and do too much. So let me see what you have to say. Let's take a look here. Okay, how's that? It looks like the sound went up for just a second. I think we're back. If we're back, tell me on the chat. I thought I'd give you guys a break. You're kind of tired of hearing me anyway. So. All right, are we back? All right, good. All right. So what you might have missed when I switched over was talking about the example of doing too much. And Candi, what was the last thing I was talking about before you lost audio? So let me see, Jim, M and C, how high do your nitrates get before water changes? I try and keep the nitrates around 20 as a target. That's my target. But but I have had them get as high as 40. I don't panic. I think our fish have a much higher resiliency to it. Now, certainly when I do start up a discus tank, I understand they can be more sensitive, so I will be watching nitrates a lot closer then. BJ Palmer, Ben, sorry for being late. BJ, do you have a note? I need a note. I need to see a note while you're late. No problem, my friend. I'm glad you're here. Mattman B, I'm bad. I haven't tested my water. Perhaps I will today. You know, I mentioned last week, or maybe on Wednesday evening, that water testing, I will go ahead and I'll go ahead and test water pretty regularly when I'm starting up a tank. I'm testing these tanks very, very regularly. But as time goes on and I go into a routine that's very workable, and I know I'm getting the results I'm looking for, my testing will, full disclosure, in all honesty, the time between tests will get longer and longer. And only if I notice something unusual or I do a change, let's say with filtration or something like that, I might start testing again. Let's say I add 6 brand new fish at once. Maybe I'll add a little bacteria, a little extra water conditioner, maybe do a test over a few days just to make sure things don't spike, just to make sure that the beneficial bacteria is keeping up with the new bioload. So, yeah, full disclosure, my testing can get a little bit far apart as well. So I'm going to dip into the chat here. Looks like we have 184 viewers. Is that what I'm saying on the... let's go ahead and kick that up a little bit more. Let's get up to 200. What do you say? For those of you who shared the link, I thank you. Did I miss any super chats? Let me see here. I think I'm caught up on super chats. If I did miss any, Candy, let me know. And Brock, I think I thanked you for that super chat. Thank you for that. Underwater and curious, bought 6 Corys today. Bus broke down, had to walk 6 miles in the winter. Burr, fish survived. Wow. I'm glad both of you, I'm glad the fish and you survived. Wow. Steve Weber, I have fish that occasionally get sunken belly. You may have a low-grade parasite. And if you're going to treat for that, I would go ahead and treat the entire tank, because if one has it, probably all of them have it. The fish that gets the sunken belly might be low on the hierarchy, the pecking order of the tank, and isn't allowed or is afraid to get to the food as aggressively as other fish. So you may have to start feeding a little bit to the right, a little bit to the left, way to the right, way to the left, so that all of your fish can get to the food, because if that fish is being harassed or is afraid, they can't get to the food. And after a while, they'll start getting a sunken belly. They'll also get weak and more prone to disease. So something to watch for. I believe the common thinking out there is that most fish have some type of parasite. I know as humans, we have parasites that live in our intestines. It's kind of gross to think about it, but they're there. And if you become weak, if you become ill or sick, your immune system becomes compromised, the fish's immune system becomes compromised under stress, ammonia spikes, pH shifts, water temperature rapid shifts, whatever. Being harassed, being bullied. What'll happen is those parasites start to get a better hold. So watch that. Watch how that fish acts during feeding time. Is he getting to the food? And if not, try and set up your feeding so that they can follow him around and drop a decoy on one side, and then follow that guy around and then drop some right over his head and see if that helps. Brian Koppel, did I thank you for that super chat, my friend? Thank you so much for that. Great information you put out. Much appreciated. Keep up the great work. My pleasure. Thank you so much for the help. And I love that little most interesting man icon that you're using there. All right. Ben, hello, Sweden. I miss John's Endotheo from Sweden. I was a goaltender from Buffalo, New York. Well, I must have dropped in on someone else's conversation there. And Tony says that coffee tastes better in a Ben O. Cichlid mug. That has been proven scientifically. That we have the peer-reviewed research. It's out. Coffee tastes better in a Ben O. Cichlid mug. If it doesn't, you have a 100% guarantee. All right, let's see. Misfit Reptiles and Aquatics. Hello to you too, my friend. Let's see. Evolution. I need 1,000 gallon per second on my 10 gallon. There's always a comedian in the chat. All right, let's see. Evolution 8R E-Heims are whisper quiet. Yes, that's what I've heard. And most canisters, when set up correctly, are quiet. And that is one of the advantages of canisters. You don't get the sound of water cascading into the top like you would with a hang-on back. You don't get bubbles. You don't get all that. It's completely quiet. And if they're set up correctly, I mean, I'm sure you could probably incorrectly set up a E-Heim and get it to make noise as well. Hey, it looks like 198. We might just break 200 here. Thank you to those of you who shared the link. Bought a 55 starter. The heater didn't even get the water to 70 degrees. Just got E-Heim 200 watt base, $40. Best $40 ever. Yeah, those E-Heim Jaeger, made in Germany. Make sure it's made in Germany. I've said it before. Those E-Heim Jaeger are indestructible beasts, great heaters. Chance of failure is next to zero. I still suggest you use a controller that you plug the heater into. And if the sensor of your controller says that your heater has had a thermostat malfunction and is going to overheat your tank, it shuts it off. So I highly recommend a controller. However, E-Heim are as my kids say, the bomb. So most definitely love those heaters. I have some of the very big 300 watt E-Heim heaters, and I'll be putting those in the bigger tank that I'm hoping I'm going to be getting soon. I'm trying to get an answer from glass cages. Okay, T-Bones had my aquarium for, let me see, yeah, T-Bone, knock on wood, not having any problems, that's good. Jordan LaBelle, I am swapping out all my media with foam in my 3FX6. It's helping, haven't run it long enough to really test yet. Yeah, you know, when you do big changes like that, Jordan, I would suggest you do it on a gradient. And by that, what I mean is, if you have these different levels in your filter, right? Well, and I know this seems like it'll prolong it, but I'll tell you, for the good of the fish, swap out one compartment. Let it run for a few weeks. And swap out another compartment. Let it run for a few weeks. Swap out another compartment. You'll get there. You'll get there eventually, and you'll put a lot less stress on your fish by doing it that way. So let's see here. Dirt Ramper. Wow. Dirt Ramper says we have a generic whole house backup generator. Not exactly cheap, but it's sized large enough to run everything, including HVAC. That's awesome. That's the kind of generator you want. Now, is that one gas powered? And by that, what I mean is natural gas. And does it have a sensor that it can tell if electricity goes off and then it kicks on automatically? So even if you're not home, is it wired into your system? Because I've heard of those. They're expensive. They can be as much as, I've heard as much as $10,000 in some cases. But, if you have, let's say you had a big coral tank and you had $10,000 in saltwater fish and corals in there, might not be a bad investment. All right, let's see here. Thank you, Candi, for sharing the FX6 playlist. That's a pretty popular playlist. And I'm scrolling through the chat. Marinos is in Cyprus. Wow. This live stream is all over the world. That's awesome. I have a question. If you can help me, please. I bought a new One Sun 304B for my aquarium, and the flow is high. How can I reduce the flow? Well, you can reduce the flow by doing the thing I mentioned earlier. You can pack it up with with sponges, and if you want to, don't let the sponges go over the top of the basket, because you're not going to be able to get the top cap on the basket, and you're going to rattle. But instead of coarse sponges or medium sponges, you can do perhaps maybe all fine sponges, and that's going to slow the water flow down a little bit. Sunsuns do not have a way of adjusting water flow the way a fluval does. Fluval has these valves that you can turn, and they'll actually can turn the but which way? I don't want to break them. You can turn them, and that will actually reduce or increase the flow accordingly. And let's say you want to slow it down a little bit during feeding or something like that. But unfortunately, the Sunsuns don't have that. They don't have a flow control. So you're going to have to jerry rig it. You're going to have to put some fine sponges inside of it. Maybe, and this might be crazy, might not even work, and might create leaks. If you were to put a clamp, like clamp down just a little bit the hoses just a little bit, but I don't know if I'd recommend that, because you might create unnecessary pressure on the connections, and all of a sudden you'd have a leak. So not sure if I'd recommend that, but you're going to have to work from the inside of the filter. That's the only way you can do that with a Sunsun. You may want to put a pre-filter on the intake. Get a block of fine filter media. Go ahead and cut it out, put it over the intake. Usually I'd recommend coarse or medium for an intake filter cover. Get one that's fine, and it will inhibit a little bit of the intake, and that should slow down the flow a little bit. So let me know if some of that helps. I'm just spitballing here. I'm just coming up with ideas and throwing them out there. M&C Aquatics, my 120, overstocked with peacocks and haps. All I run is 3 sponge filters, and I hang on back crystal clear water. I clean 1 sponge a week, change out my floss every other week, water change weekly. There you go. Sounds like you have it dialed in. I mean, if you have it dialed in, don't mess with it, right? I mean, that sounds to me perfect. Some people don't like sponge filters. Some people love them. Some people don't care about them. They don't like the filters or the object in the tank. Hey, look, you know what? It's working. Your fish are healthy. Your water's clean. Someone will look at that and go, oh my goodness, you don't have the water turnover. You need to put 2 canisters on there, blah, 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 blah. If it's testing out good and the fish are healthy, they're colorful, they're eating, they're active, you're good. Hold on one second. Just want to turn up that heater a little bit. I have a real cool heater in this garage, and it helps keep it at an optimum temperature. All right, let's see here. Jordan LaBelle, my FX6 is a huge sponge filter. I might be doing that with my FX6, Jordan, and again, using the substrate as the primary home for my beneficial bacteria. So my FX6 that I end up putting on the 90-gallon that's coming is probably going to be sponges. It'll probably be coming from the top down, it'll be fine, medium, and coarse sponges. We'll see. I haven't quite entirely decided yet. And another addition to my list of 5 ways that we create filter problems is not understanding the direction of flow. You have to understand how your filters flow. With a fluval, the water, circulates around and then goes down that middle section of the fluval. So, you want to set things up so that you have that coarse, medium, and then fine at the bottom. And any chemical, if you're using chemical filtration, have that at the bottom of your middle section of your fluval. That's how I prefer to set it up. With your Sun-Suns, it's opposite. The water goes to the bottom of your Sun-Sun canister and then gets pulled up through the baskets. So you have your coarse at the bottom, medium sponge, fine sponge, then your media, Biohome, Matrix, pot scrubbers, whatever you're using, and then on the top you would put your you'd put your chemical, your ChemiPure, your Purigen, if you're using chemical. If you're not, then you just put another tray full of media, right? So let's see here. M&C Aquatics, the highest 40 parts per million on nitrates. I think that's tolerable. I think a lot of folks out there, I read a post in one of the fish keeping groups on Facebook the other day. Somebody was agonizing about 20 parts per million. I can't get my nitrates below 20 parts per million. Help, I need help. And I don't know. I think people are worrying unnecessarily. They're worrying too much. Joshua Miller, shout out from Memphis. You're not too far from me, Joshua. As a matter of fact, it's I take the 40 freeway toward Memphis to get home when I come from downtown Nashville. I can keep driving and go to your place. Have you heard of Purigen crashing nitrogen cycles? This is from Curtis Martin. I have not heard of that, even though I do know that Pond Guru is not big on chemical filtration. He doesn't like the use of chemical filtration in conjunction with Biohome. He says it does something. It binds the nitrates in some ways, or so those nitrates can't get converted, right? So you can't get what he calls the full cycle, where nitrates then get converted and gas off. So he's not big on the chemical filtration. So I've heard of it that way. I personally don't use chemical filtration. Perhaps in a new tank, if I'm getting what some people call new tank syndrome, and you're getting the cloudiness or those particles that don't seem to go away, then I would throw some Purigen in there, maybe some ChemiPure or some ChemiPure Green in this tank because it has some live plants in it. So, but then after the tanks get established, I pull chemical filtration out, and my tanks do fine. They've done fine without it. Even though I do notice in a brand new tank, if you put some Purigen in there, it really does clarify. It really does polish the water. It really grabs onto stuff. But I think if you listen to Pond Guru, and I really like Richard Through, I think he's a really good guy. I've had correspondence with him in the past. I think he's sincere, in what he does, and he feels that because of those chemicals, the way they bond the nitrates, they don't allow the nitrates to go through that final step of allowing anaerobic bacteria to have those nitrates to feed on, so you can get that full cycle. The full cycle, which is where you go ammonia, nitrate, and then back down to nothing, so that because you have bacteria that's eating the nitrates, the anaerobic bacteria. Let's see here. S. Sharista. I was doing the same as you did. I was going to a Penguin 400, but check the price. Oh, okay. This is just a conversation within the chat about pricing. Be sure you check be sure you check Amazon.com/shop/Ben Ochart before you buy anything ever again. Check. Yeah, Daniel, I understand that. I mean, Pond Guru is an owner of BioHome, so I understand what you're saying. I mean, you either and have I achieved that full cycle? I didn't use enough of his product to give it the kind of test that it would warrant. And but I will say that the 60-gallon that I was running in California was, again, I've said this before, was my most stable setup over the years, the most stable setup, and it had BioHome Ultimate in it. So was it because of the BioHome Ultimate? Was it because of the Marine Pure? Was it the fact that it was a smaller setup with a lighter stock load? Hey, my friend, it's a fluid situation, right? It's a fluid situation. A lot of factors going back and forth. But because of my personal communication with him and my trust of my judgment of people, I think his heart's in the right place. I don't think he's out to shaft anybody. So that's just my take on him. I don't want to get into a big debate on personal feelings about him. Curtis Martin, 10 years in the hobby, slowly trying to get to the master level. Curtis, we will never get to the master level. Right? Always be learning. I think the second that a person thinks to themselves, I've arrived, I'm now a master, is when they start to slip back and they make a big mistake. They get a little bit too cocky, a little bit too confident, a little bit too full of themselves. They start to take themselves too seriously, and we always have to be learning. There always has to be a certain degree of humbleness and a willingness to learn new ideas, and otherwise you will stagnate. So I don't think we'll ever get to the end-all master of all time. I think we always have to have that open mind. Hey, Stanley in North Alabama, hello to you. Not too far from me. Stephen LeBlanc, I am going to pick up that green tear, and that's a little bit too big for my tank right now. I'm going to put him up in a setup tank, a separate setup tank, and then add him to the larger tank. I think what I'm going to end up doing is allow some of the more peaceful South Americans and maybe some Central Americans grow up in this tank here, or at least put on some size, and set up a larger tank right off the bat and put some of the ones that are more notorious in that larger tank. A standard Jack Dempsey, the green terror, maybe put maybe a red tear, maybe a some of these fish that people are telling me that if you put them together young, there's a chance they might be able to get along. Put a lot of hiding spots in there. Maybe use a lot of these caves from you can see them here. These caves from underwater galleries. Maybe put a lot of those in there, and in the larger tank, and then over time, as the severums become bigger, move them in there, and so create sort of an evolution or a step, a way of graduating into the bigger tank. At the same time, setting up a tank for your bigger predators. Okay, you know I love the big predators. I love the big cichlids, and every now and then I'll play a little bit of this, just some fish pornography from the old tanks I used to have, just to remember and remind me how much I loved having these big monsters. So I'm going to be setting up these 200-gallon tanks. Maybe I'll be moving some of the bigger South Americans into it, but certainly with the intention of getting some of these larger haps, like I used to have that beautiful fire hap, that large trout the big Venusus, right? I love those fish, and I want to get some more of those. And I think in the arrangement that I've gotten into with my friend James over at the Cichlid Shack, that's going to help to facilitate that, because he is truly a master and very good, truly good at getting a hold of and securing some beautiful, F1 big predator, which you would call predator, just a made-up term, big haps, right? Some of the bigger fish. Somebody's asking about Oscars. I don't know. Some people say Oscars are actually on the docile side compared to some of the fish that I've mentioned. I love the look of some of these Oscars. Albino Oscars, I think, are beautiful. So I don't know. There might be an Oscar in my future. What do you think? You think I should get one? Let me know in the comments. Hey, Bonnie, thank you for the help. Have you ever used a product called Supratech, a natural garlic liquid? I'm trying it now. No, I haven't. Is it made specifically for aquariums? Is it made for aquariums? Or is it just a pure garlic product? Supratech, I haven't heard of it. I've used Focus, which is like a garlic-based product that you would use along with, Metroplex, things like that. And then you soak food in it, so the fish are more likely to take food that was soaked in meds. So you put a little Focus in there and that. So, but I know garlic does a lot of good things for the fish. It can help with their intestines. It can help build up their immune system. A lot of it can do that for you. As a human, garlic will do that. I heard that's where the legend of garlic and the vampires, because the people in those Romanian areas that were eating a lot of garlic, they were not getting the Black Death. They seem to have been more resilient to the plague, and so so this legend about garlic. But yeah, garlic helps our immune systems. It's good in a lot of different ways. So let me know how that goes. And thank you so much for that super chat. I'm going to scroll back and see if I missed any other super chats. Leo Contreras. Thank you, Leo. I appreciate that. I think I did miss your super chat. What do you do if your tap water already comes out around 20 in nitrates? Good old Cali well water, it gets around 40. And I know you're getting a big storm down there in California, so you might actually end up with more issues. Very often you get the farms in the Central Valley running off and who knows what. But, you really don't have much choice except, what are you going to do? Start using bottled water? Go to one of those water places that have the machines. And that's a tough one. You're going to have to do, in my estimation, water changes in excess of 50% just to stay at 20, just to be able to keep it at around 20. Because let's say you're at 35 or let's say you're running at 30 or 40 in nitrates, you're changing 20, 30%, you're replacing it with water that has 20 parts per million. You're not going to get ahead. You're going to have what I called in a prior video, you're going to have a nitrate creep, like the salt keepers. They call it salt creep when they have the salt start to take over the equipment. You're going to have nitrate creep, and it's going to start creeping up. You're going to have to get your water changes down to 70, 80%. Let the water return to the tank slowly. Be treating as you add. Treat for the full volume of the tank, right? If it's a 200-gallon, 100-gallon tank, treat for the full 100, even though you only pulled 80 gallons out. And I'd double up on water changes and go 70, 80%. Short of getting an RO system. But if you go into an RO system, you're going to have other problems. You're going to have to replace the minerals, the valuable minerals that were removed by the RO. So you'll have a new set of issues and challenges. So That's a tough one. But I tell you, folks, test your tap. Test your tap, because you might be driving yourself crazy about something that is actually coming out of your tap. So never a bad idea. And kudos to you, Leo. Well done to you for testing your tap, because some people will drive themselves nuts and not realize that the whole time the problem was with the tap. So at least you're on the road to fixing it. Hey, Elflower, didn't know you were here. Donald Fish Vibes, hello. Hello, Donald. Daniel Barrett, always glad to see you. Jim M, hello, Jim M. Dirt Ramper, glad you're here. Let's see here. Who else? I have a Phoenix HC810 in my 250 that I highly recommend. Is that a heater, Steve? That Phoenix? Daniel Velez is responding that you could put a ball valve on the output. Yeah, anything that'll restrict the line. If you're trying to reduce the flow on a filter, anything that'll restrict sponges, intake covers, things like that. But I don't know. You start messing with putting something internally. For example, somebody asked about putting a filter inside the intake. Like you have that unit, the grill, that is the intake of your filter. Someone asked, why don't you put a filter inside of that instead of a pre-filter over it? I tried that. It became clogged in about 5 minutes. I mean, really seriously clogged. I don't know why. I have no idea why. But it clogged up very, very quickly. So I went back to the external clamp on, and that worked fine. So you got to really, if you do something like that, my recommendation is that you hang around, don't go anywhere, stay close, and keep an eye on things, because if it starts to go nuts, if something really blocks and starts to go nuts and you start to overflow your tank, or filters start to fail or burn out because you're not running water, you're running a dry, you start to run your sun dry, that filter's going to burn. It's going to burn out. It's going to overheat and die on you. So stay close. All right. Bonnie Eden, I think I did catch that super chat. Philim Goonan? Hey, Ben, greetings from Ireland. Well, greetings to you. And beautiful country. A friend of mine came back from a trip there, said it was the most beautiful and friendliest areas he'd ever been to. Looking forward to seeing you set up a discus tank. Are you planning a single strain or mixed? I will probably end up with a single strain, only because there's a fellow that provides the discus to the person I'll be using. I'll probably be using James Largo. There's a very famous discus breeder that is the source that James uses, so I'll probably end up with that strain. These are what are called no pepper discus. They don't get the little black dots, so I can use a darker substrate or darker decor, and it doesn't darken the discus or cause peppering, dark spots on the discus. So let's see here. Brock Henderson, you should look into bichers. I keep them with my South Americans. Bichers are awesome. They look prehistoric. I love them. And I am going to look into them. I saw some albino ones that looked really pretty. Love the body shape. And they just look like something out of one of those Land Before Time movies. So yeah, bichers. I'm going to look into those. I'm not even sure if I'm pronouncing it correctly. Instant Aquatics, why is having a full cycle necessary if you have things like water changes, plants, or purigen? Probably because it is the healthiest. It is a complete, sort of the way it occurs in nature, kind of a setup. So you have all the different varieties of bacteria. It's a complete ecosystem that we're having to do extra steps because we don't have that complete ecosystem. I would still do water changes, right? To add minerals, remove hormones, do the kind of things like that, right? But 99.9% of the aquarium keepers do not have the complete cycle. So it is a little bit of a holy grail that some people are after. If you search on YouTube, you'll find people that talk about how they have achieved a complete cycle, and it's good. It's a good thing to have. Let's say you became ill or you went on vacation and you couldn't do the water change somehow, or you skipped a water change because of you wouldn't have to worry that much. You're not going to get, your nitrates aren't going to get up to 80, 100. It's not going to happen. You have bacteria that is backing you up on the reduction of nitrates. So not a bad thing to have, but not a substitute for taking care of your tanks. One man's opinion. Everything I say on this channel, one man's opinion. Stephen LeBlanc giving me a warning about green tears. Yeah, let me tell you, I'm going to have my head on a swivel. I got to have that with all the fish I have. If anyone is that video I released, was it yesterday, Nipper? That Nipper video. Even with these, you wouldn't consider Geophagus or your Severums overly aggressive, but you can get an oddball fish that goes a little crazy. So Metalhead D Prime, thank you so much for that $5 super chat. Very appreciated. Where did you get that beware of cichlid sign? I need a few of those. Go to amazon.com/shop/Ben Ochart. I am listing that sign at my Amazon store. So go ahead and pick one up. Yeah, I love them. It was a gift from my son. And you're right, Sean. Green tears, I am learning, like so many fish that can be aggressive, it really is a luck of the draw. You might get a jerk, or you might get one that is mellow. So as I stock up my tanks, I want you all to pray for me. All right. So this is the site. You can pick up the sign, as well as coffee mugs and sweatshirts, like you see my son there. That's the son that bought the sign for me. And be sure to use a live stream so you get 10% at checkout. If you haven't done so already, be sure to hit that sub and that bell so that you get notified when I load new content. And come on over to Ben O Cichlid. We have a great, helpful group of fish keepers there. It's open to all fish keepers, not just cichlid keepers, live bears, salties, everybody is welcome. And for some behind the scenes look at things and previews, go to ben.o.cichlid. And I want to thank all of you who super chatted and supported the channel today with that. Thank you to my wonderful moderators, and a big shout out to my friends at the Cichlid Shack. James Largo, you are appreciated. My friends Mike and Jack and family over at Elite Cichlids, my friends over at Underwater Galleries, and also my friends over at Expertmatic. Thank you to all of you for backing up the channel. And I think we're going to go ahead and end off. We ran over an hour. I always worry about not having enough to say, and then I end up running over. Thank you, Denny, GP, Candi, my super moderators, and you folks. You rock. Love you. And I hope to see you again next week. Bye-bye.